In the frozen wastes of the Arctic, a group of scientists from around the world worked tirelessly on a secret research project. The cold was harsh, but their curiosity kept them moving. They had been exploring beneath the ice for years, looking for signs of ancient life, but nothing had prepared them for what they were about to find. One fateful day, deep under the thick layers of snow and ice, they discovered a strange underground facility, hidden for centuries. At first, they thought it was just another abandoned military base from the old world, but as they explored the complex, they realized it was something far more incredible. The walls were lined with strange alien technology that hummed with life, even though no one had touched it in centuries. Inside, they found what seemed to be an old cryogenic chamber. The chamber was covered in frost, and it was clear that it had been untouched for ages. But as the scientists carefully examined the chamber, one of them, Dr. Elara Hayes, discovered a panel with a blinking light. Without fully understanding why, she pressed the button, and the hum of the chamber shifted. To the shock of everyone present, the chamber's cryogenic pods began to open one by one, releasing clouds of cold vapor. Inside each pod was a person, frozen in time, their bodies perfectly preserved, as if they had been placed there just yesterday. The scientists stepped back, unsure of what to do, but as the fog cleared, the first of the humans began to stir. Dr. Hayes stepped forward, her heart racing. She had seen this kind of technology before, but never on such a grand scale. This wasn't just a relic, it was a sign. These people had been frozen for centuries, maybe even millennia, but they were not supposed to be here. They were from Earth's distant past, long before the world had been destroyed. As the humans awoke, they blinked and looked around, confused. The world they had known was gone. Earth, once home to millions, was no more. The people in these chambers were survivors of the last days, left behind when the Galactic Council, a vast interstellar alliance, had decided that humanity was too dangerous to live. The Council had wiped out Earth, and with it, the entire human race. At least, that's what the galaxy had believed. But now, the humans were here, alive, confused, and ready to understand the truth of what had happened. Dr. Hayes watched them closely, her thoughts racing. These people weren't just survivors, they were the last hope of humanity. If they could figure out what happened to Earth, they could find a way to rebuild, to fight back. But first, they had to learn about the world they had been locked away from for so long. The humans began to talk, their voices weak but filled with determination. They asked questions about the world, the galaxy, and what had happened to their home. But Dr. Hayes knew they wouldn't have all the answers yet. It would take time to uncover the mysteries of the past and understand why they were left behind. As they stepped out of the chamber and into the cold, harsh world, they realized that this was only the beginning. Their journey to reclaim Earth had started, but they were going to need more than just hope to succeed. They would need allies, technology, and a fight against forces far beyond their understanding. For the first time in centuries, humanity was awake, and they were not going to go down without a fight. The survivors slowly adjusted to their new reality. They had awakened in a world that was not their own, one where Earth had long been erased from the galaxy's memory. The snowstorm howled outside, but inside the cold, dark chamber, the humans began to find their bearings. Dr. Elara Hayes, the leader of the group, gathered them together to discuss what they had learned and what they needed to do next. "We need to understand what happened to Earth," Elara said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We need to find out why the Galactic Council destroyed our planet, and if there's any hope of rebuilding." The group was small, just 20 survivors, but they were strong, determined people, each one with a unique skill that would help them survive. Some were scientists, some were soldiers, and some were engineers. Together, they formed a team capable of taking on whatever challenges lay ahead. As they left the underground chamber, they stepped into the icy wasteland that was now Earth. The once vibrant landscapes of mountains, forests, and oceans had been replaced with endless white snowfields, icy winds, and dark skies. The world was silent, abandoned, and broken. The humans could barely believe that this was the planet they had called home. "We need to find shelter and supplies," Alara said. "And we need answers. Let's start by checking out the old records in the chamber." The group ventured back into the facility, where they discovered a hidden room filled with ancient data cores and communication devices. The records were old, much older than they had expected, but still intact. As they sifted through the data, they learned something astonishing. The Galactic Council had destroyed Earth not because it was weak, but because humanity had once been a powerful force in the galaxy. The Council feared that humans would rise again and disrupt the peaceful order they had established. The Council had erased Earth from the galaxy's memory, leaving only a small, secret group of survivors to carry on the human legacy. "Earth wasn't destroyed by accident," said Alara as she read through the records. "The Council made sure humanity couldn't return. But we're here now. We can't let them erase us again." The survivors felt a fire in their hearts. They weren't just the last of humanity. They were the future. The question was, how would they survive in a galaxy that thought they were extinct? They spent the next few weeks exploring the area around the facility, collecting supplies, and learning to adapt to their harsh environment. They discovered that Earth's wildlife had changed over the centuries. New species had evolved, some dangerous and others surprisingly helpful. They learned to live off the land, using the technology from the ancient chamber to help them survive. As they traveled further from the facility, they began to realize that their fight wasn't just for survival. They needed to learn more about the galaxy, the other species, the Galactic Council, and the forces that had erased them from history. The humans knew they would need to be clever and resourceful to make it in this strange new world. Alara looked at the horizon one evening, her eyes filled with determination. "We're not just here to survive. We're here to make sure humanity's legacy is remembered, and we're going to make sure the galaxy knows we're still here." With that, the group set their sights on the stars, knowing that their journey had only just begun. The fight to reclaim Earth and restore humanity's place in the galaxy was ahead of them, and they would not rest until they had answers. The survivors had barely begun to understand the new world they were thrust into when they realized their struggle would not be limited to Earth alone. The Galactic Council, the mysterious interstellar government that had wiped out humanity, was still very much in power. The more the humans dug through the ancient data cores they found in the Arctic facility, the more they uncovered about the vast, powerful network that controlled the galaxy. Alara Hayes gathered the team around the large data screen in the research room. The images flickered with information about the Galactic Council, how it was made up of several powerful species, each controlling large parts of the galaxy. The council, they learned, governed with strict laws and ruthless control. It was clear that no one dared challenge their authority. The humans were nothing more than a forgotten memory in the galaxy's history. But why? "They destroyed us for a reason," Alara said, her voice cold as she studied the screen. "The council was afraid of what humanity could become. We were a rising power in the galaxy. They feared that if we continued to grow, we would challenge their control." Dr. Liam Grant, the group's chief scientist, stepped forward. "It's not just fear. They saw humanity as a threat. We had technology that could compete with their most advanced weapons, and our growth, our ability to adapt so quickly, it was something they couldn't control." The team stared at the information on the screen. The records showed that Earth had been thriving, with rapid technological advances and military power. But humanity's ambition had triggered the Council's fear. The Council had acted swiftly and without mercy, launching a massive attack that eradicated all life on Earth, leaving only the underground survivors hidden away in stasis. "We were erased," Alara said softly, "but not forgotten. The Council doesn't know we're still here. They think we're gone for good." The survivors felt the weight of this truth. Humanity had once been powerful enough to challenge the galaxy's ruling forces, and now they were nothing more than an afterthought. The Council had succeeded in erasing Earth's presence from the galaxy's records, wiping all trace of humanity from history. But as the survivors stood in the cold remnants of their world, they knew one thing: they were not finished. "We need to find out where the Council is now," said Alara, determination in her eyes. "If we're going to take back our place in this galaxy, we have to know where they are hiding and how we can stop them." Dr. Grant nodded. "We might be small in number, but we have something they don't. We know what it feels like to be underestimated. We know how to fight back from nothing." The survivors, having barely scraped by in their first few weeks, now felt a new sense of purpose. They had no choice but to take the fight to the Galactic Council. They would not let the galaxy continue without knowing that humanity had survived. They had been erased once, but they would not be forgotten again. As the team packed their gear and prepared to leave the Arctic facility behind, Alara felt a deep sense of resolve. This is just the beginning. We will not stop until we have answers. The galaxy needs to remember humanity. And with that, the survivors set their sights on the galaxy beyond, preparing for the fight that would define their future, and the future of every species who had been oppressed under the Council's rule. The survivors had spent weeks studying the data cores, analyzing the maps, and preparing themselves for the journey ahead. They knew they couldn't stay hidden in the Arctic forever. The Galactic Council, although unaware of their survival, had powerful monitoring systems scattered across the galaxy. If they stayed too long in one place, they would eventually be found. Alara Hayes led her group out of the facility and into the unknown. The cold was harsh, and the world around them looked nothing like the Earth they remembered. The landscape had changed, altered by time and nature's slow healing process. But there was no time to waste. They needed to find answers, and they needed to find them quickly. The group set out across the ice fields, moving toward what they believed was the location of a former Council outpost. They hoped to find something, anything, that would give them more information about the Council's movements and weaknesses. But as they traveled farther from the Arctic base, they encountered something they weren't expecting. A small, sleek ship suddenly appeared in the sky above them. It was like nothing the humans had ever seen before. The ship was smooth, almost organic in its design, and it hovered quietly in the air before descending toward them. The survivors froze. They had been preparing for battle, but they had not expected contact this soon. "I think it's a scout ship," whispered Liam Grant, his eyes wide with fear and curiosity. "We need to hide." But it was too late. The ship had already spotted them. It landed in front of the survivors with a soft thud, and the hatch opened. From inside, several figures stepped out. They were tall, with sleek, metallic bodies that reflected the light like polished armor. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, and they moved with a strange, calculated precision. Alara's heart raced, but she stood tall. The survivors were ready for anything, but they had no idea who these beings were or what they wanted. One of the figures stepped forward, its voice cold and mechanical. "You are human," it said in a language the survivors could barely understand. But from the tone, it was clear that the being knew exactly who they were. Humanity was destroyed. There should be no survivors. Alara didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her voice steady. "We survived, and we will make sure the galaxy knows we are still here." The metallic figure studied her for a moment, its glowing eyes scanning her every movement. It seemed almost surprised by her response, but it didn't speak again for a long moment. Finally, it turned its head slightly, as if communicating with someone or something else. "We will report back to the Galactic Council," the figure said, its voice impassive. "You will be eliminated." The survivors braced themselves. The words hung in the air, heavy with the threat of violence. But Alara didn't back down. She knew this was only the beginning. They were not going to let anyone stand in their way. "Not if we have anything to say about it," she replied firmly. Before the metallic beings could react, the humans quickly took action. They had been preparing for a moment like this. Using the knowledge they had gained from the old technology in the Arctic facility, they sabotaged the ship's power core. Sparks flew, and the ship began to smoke, forcing the beings to retreat back inside. In the chaos, the humans managed to disable the ship, but they knew they couldn't afford to stay in one place for too long. The Galactic Council would be notified, and they would send reinforcements. Alara quickly gave the order to move. They needed to leave and find new allies, if they had any hope of standing against the Council. As the survivors made their way through the snowstorm, Alara looked back one last time at the disabled scout ship. This was only their first encounter, but it had made one thing clear. The fight for humanity's future was about to get much more dangerous. The survivors couldn't afford to waste any time. After disabling the scout ship, they knew the Galactic Council would soon send more forces to investigate. They had narrowly escaped detection, but the Council's reach was vast, and their enemies were relentless. As they moved through the cold, unforgiving landscape, Alara Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted. The group made their way to a safer location, deep within a ruined city that had once been a thriving hub of human civilization. The buildings were now in ruins, overgrown with strange alien plants that had adapted to the harsh conditions of the new Earth. The survivors used the old city's remains as cover, searching for any clues that could help them understand the Council's actions. In a forgotten underground archive, they uncovered a series of records that would change everything. The data was old, very old, but still accessible. As they accessed the information, the survivors were shocked to learn that Earth's destruction was not a random act. The Galactic Council had feared humanity's potential to upset the delicate balance of power they had established across the galaxy. Humanity was not just a race of warlike people. No, they had once been more than that. Earth's people had created technologies that were far beyond the capabilities of most galactic species. They had developed weapons that could rival the Council's most powerful fleets, and their ability to adapt and grow faster than any other species had made them a serious threat. But what the Council didn't understand was that humans were not interested in conquest. They were interested in exploration and growth. As Alara read through the records, she could feel the weight of history bearing down on her. "We were not the villains they painted us to be," she said softly, her voice filled with disbelief. "They destroyed us because they feared us, but we were never the enemy." Dr. Liam Grant leaned in, studying the data. "It gets worse," he said, his voice grim. This wasn't the first time the Council had wiped out a species they considered a threat. They'd done this before, many times. The survivors were stunned. They had always thought humanity's destruction was an isolated event, something unique to their planet. But now they realized that the Galactic Council had a long history of eradicating species they saw as powerful or dangerous. Alara clenched her fists, her anger rising. "We're not just fighting for Earth," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We're fighting for every species they've destroyed. We're going to make sure they never do this again." The survivors now understood their mission more clearly than ever before. They weren't just trying to survive. They were trying to free the galaxy from the grip of an oppressive, fear-driven empire. They had the knowledge, the will, and the technology to make a difference. But they knew the path ahead would be difficult. The Council had unimaginable power, and their enemies were many. Yet, in the depths of their hearts, the survivors felt something stirring, a belief that they could succeed. Humanity had always fought against impossible odds, and now, as the last hope for their species, they would do it once again. With renewed purpose, Alara stood tall. "We have the truth now. We have to spread it. The galaxy needs to know what the Council has done, and what we're capable of." And with that, the survivors prepared to leave the ruined city behind. Their journey was far from over, but they were no longer just hiding. They were ready to fight. The survivors knew they couldn't defeat the Galactic Council alone. They needed allies, other species, other forces that had suffered at the hands of the Council. The data from the old archives had given them a glimpse into the atrocities the Council had committed across the galaxy. They weren't the only ones oppressed. There were other planets, other civilizations, who had been silenced, erased, or enslaved by the same brutal force. Alara Hayes stood with her team in a small, hidden underground base, scanning the stars for any signs of life. They had decided to make contact with a few of these oppressed groups. The first step was to find the Zerasi, an elusive species that was known to resist the Council. They were rumored to be scattered across the galaxy, hiding in the shadows, but if they could be found, they would be the key to rallying the galaxy's oppressed forces. "We need to make contact with them," Alara said, her voice steady. "We need their strength. If we're going to take down the Council, we can't do it alone." Liam Grant adjusted the coordinates on the map, trying to pinpoint the location of the Zerasi. They were skilled at hiding, but with the right technology, the survivors had a chance. "The Zerasi are known for their stealth," Liam explained. "They're not easy to find, but there's a small fleet of ships in this sector. They might help us." The survivors traveled in a small, modified transport ship designed to avoid detection by Council sensors. It was a risky move, but they had no choice. They needed to meet the Zerasi and convince them to join their cause. As they approached the coordinates, Alara's heart raced with anticipation. Suddenly, their ship was jolted by a loud sound. Alara quickly checked the radar, her eyes narrowing. "They found us," she said. "We're not alone." Before she could react, several sleek, fast ships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding them on all sides. The ships were unlike anything the survivors had seen before. Black, with sharp, angular designs that glinted in the light of distant stars. The survivors braced for battle, but just as quickly as the ships appeared, they vanished. The radar went silent, and the ship was surrounded by a strange, calm silence. A voice echoed through their communication system. "You are not alone," it said, its tone sharp and confident. "We've been watching." Alara's eyes widened in shock. The Zerasi have found them. A ship moved closer to their transport, and soon a figure stepped onto their deck. Tall and cloaked in dark armor, the Zerasi emissary towered over the humans. Its face was hidden behind a mask, but the voice was unmistakably strong. "You have been searching for us," the Zerasi said, "but we were never lost." Alara stepped forward, her voice steady. "We need your help. The Galactic Council is hunting us down, and they've destroyed our home. We want to stop them, and we need you." The Zerasi emissary studied her for a long moment, and then slowly nodded. "We know what the Council is capable of. We will help you, but know this: our fight will not be easy. The Council is everywhere." The survivors felt a wave of relief. They had made contact, and they had secured an ally. The Zerasi were fierce warriors, skilled in both combat and subterfuge. With their help, the survivors had a chance. "We are not alone," Alara said quietly to her team. "Together, we can fight back." With the Zerasi at their side, the survivors now had a glimmer of hope. The galaxy might be ruled by the Council, but it was not without its cracks. They would find those cracks, and they would exploit them. Together, they would bring the Council to its knees. With the Zerasi now aligned with the survivors, a new sense of hope filled the group. The humans and their new allies, united by a shared hatred of the Galactic Council, began to plan their next move. Alara Hayes knew that they couldn't just sit back and wait for the Council to come for them. The time for hiding was over. They needed to strike first, and they needed to hit hard. The Zerasi fleet was small but highly skilled. Their ships were designed for stealth and speed, perfect for attacking under the cover of darkness. They had fought against the Council for centuries and knew how to navigate the galaxy's many dangers. Together, with the survivors' knowledge of Earth's ancient technology and the Zerasi's expertise, they formed a plan to take down one of the Council's most powerful strongholds, a massive military base on a remote moon. "It's going to be dangerous," Alara said, standing in front of the gathered group. The Council has a strong presence there, but if we strike quickly, we can catch them off guard. This is our chance to show them we're not just a group of survivors. We're a force. Liam Grant and Dr. Helena Stark, the group's chief engineer, worked with the Zirasi to design a new weapon, a pulse disruptor that could disable the Council's shield systems, allowing their forces to attack without facing overwhelming resistance. The weapon was risky, and there was no guarantee it would work, but it was their best shot. As the fleet prepared to leave, Alara stood at the helm of their ship, staring out into the vast, starry expanse. They had come so far from the frozen wasteland of Earth. Now, they were about to make their mark on the galaxy. The time for fighting for survival was over. Now, they were fighting for freedom. The journey to the Council's base was long and treacherous. They had to avoid patrols and navigate through dangerous asteroid fields. But the Zirasi knew how to stay hidden, and the survivors' ship had been modified with the latest cloaking technology. They moved in silence, like shadows, slipping past the Council's defenses without a trace. When they arrived at the base, the plan was set in motion. The Zirasi ships broke off into small groups, taking out the outer defenses and creating a distraction. The humans, along with their allies, moved in closer to deliver the final blow. Now, Alara's voice echoed through the comms, signaling the start of the attack. The pulse disruptor fired, and the base's shields flickered before collapsing. The Zirasi wasted no time, launching their ships at full speed, firing precise blasts at key structures. It wasn't long before alarms blared throughout the base. The Council had been caught off guard, but they quickly mobilized their forces to defend their stronghold. The humans and the Zirasi fought side by side, pushing through the base's defenses with determination. The battle was fierce, and though they faced overwhelming odds, the survivors and their allies refused to back down. Amidst the chaos, Alara spotted a group of Council officers attempting to escape. Without hesitation, she and a few of her best fighters raced toward them. They had to capture the officers and extract as much information as possible. The survival of humanity and the galaxy depended on it. As the battle raged on, Alara couldn't help but feel the weight of everything they had fought for. This wasn't just about revenge for Earth anymore. It was about freeing the galaxy from the tyranny of the Galactic Council. With every blast, with every strike, they were one step closer to winning. The battle had been intense, but the survivors and their Zirasi allies had done it. The Council's military base on the remote moon had been destroyed. The pulse disruptor had worked better than expected, and the Zirasi's quick strike had left the base in chaos. The survivors had fought hard, but there was no time to celebrate. The real war was just beginning. Alara Hayes stood in the command room, looking at the screen that displayed the wreckage of the base. It was a small victory, but it had sent a clear message to the Galactic Council. Humanity and their allies were no longer powerless. "This is just the first step," she said, her voice firm. "We've shown the galaxy that we can fight back, but we need more. We need to keep moving." Liam Grant, who had been monitoring the data from the attack, turned to her. "There's something you need to see. I've been going through the base's records, and I found something strange. The Council's operations are far bigger than we thought." He pulled up a series of encrypted files that had been stored deep in the base's systems. They were difficult to decipher, but after some time, Liam had managed to unlock a few. The information inside shocked everyone. "What is this?" Alara asked, her voice filled with disbelief as she read the files. This isn't just about Earth." Dr. Helena Stark, the group's engineer, leaned over to examine the data. "It looks like the Council was conducting experiments. They were testing weapons, technology, even biological processes. They were trying to create something they could control." Liam continued. "The Council was experimenting with the genes of various species, trying to create a superweapon, one that could be stronger, faster, and more ruthless than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And one of the key subjects was human DNA. Alara's heart sank as she processed the information. They were trying to create an army made of humans. It gets worse, Liam added. They weren't just experimenting on humans. The Council has been harvesting the DNA of other species too. The experiments were meant to create a hybrid force, something that could be manipulated to serve them. The survivors were silent. It was worse than they had imagined. The Galactic Council had not only wiped out humanity because of fear, it had used their very essence to try to create an army of super soldiers. This is what they've been hiding, Alara said, her voice full of determination. They didn't just destroy us. They were trying to take everything from us. The revelation only fueled the survivors' resolve. They had known the Council was ruthless, but this was something else entirely. The survivors had thought they were fighting for their home, for the people they had lost, but now they knew they were fighting for much more. The Council had to be stopped, not just for Earth, but for the galaxy. If the Council succeeded in their experiments, the balance of power would shift permanently, and no one would be safe. We have to stop them, Alara said, turning to her team. We can't let them use humanity as their weapon. This fight isn't over. It's just begun. With this new information, the survivors knew what they had to do. The path ahead would be even more dangerous, but they were no longer fighting for survival alone. They were fighting to protect the galaxy from the Council's dark plans, and they would not stop until they had won. The survivors knew they had one last chance to end the Galactic Council's reign of terror. Armed with the shocking truth of the Council's experiments and their plans to create a hybrid army, they couldn't afford to hesitate. The galaxy was on the edge of a war that could change everything, and humanity's survival depended on their next move. Alara Hayes stood in the command room, the weight of their mission heavy on her shoulders. Their small fleet, now strengthened by the Zirasi and other rebel groups they had gathered along the way, was preparing for the final assault on the heart of the Galactic Council. The target, the Council's central hub, a massive station at the core of their empire. This is it, Alara said to her team, her voice steady but filled with determination. If we succeed, the Council will fall. If we fail, everything we fought for will be lost. Liam Grant, who had been tirelessly studying the Council's movements, nodded. We know their weaknesses. We've learned everything we can. Their defenses are tough, but they're not invincible. The survivors had spent weeks preparing for this moment. They had studied the blueprints of the station, identified weak points in its structure, and gathered intel from every corner of the galaxy. Every piece of information they had was crucial. They had to strike hard and fast before the Council could deploy its hybrid army. Dr. Helena Stark worked alongside the Zirasi to build the ultimate weapon, a device capable of shutting down the central hub's power grid. Without power, the station would be helpless, and the survivors would have the chance they needed to destroy it from the inside. But the device was risky. One mistake, one miscalculation, and everything could go wrong. The final countdown began. The ships, cloaked and prepared for battle, made their way toward the Council station. The tension was palpable. The fate of the galaxy rested on the shoulders of the survivors, their allies, and the desperate plan they had put together. As they approached the station, the fleet encountered the Council's first line of defense. Hundreds of enemy ships appeared, blocking their path. It was a trap, but there was no turning back. Alara gave the signal, and the battle began. The survivors' ships fired with precision, cutting through the enemy's defenses. The Zirasi fought fiercely, their ships moving in perfect harmony with the humans. For every Council ship destroyed, the survivors grew stronger. They had nothing left to lose, and they fought with a fury that shocked their enemies. Inside the station, Alara's team made their way to the power core. They were met with heavy resistance, but they pushed forward. The device had to be activated, and time was running out. With every step, they drew closer to their goal, but the station's defenses were not easy to breach. Just as the enemy forces began to close in on them, Alara and her team reached the core. With a quick motion, They activated the shutdown device, and the station's power began to flicker. The lights dimmed, and the once unstoppable station began to lose its strength. "Now," Alara shouted into the comms. The fleet, sensing the shift in power, launched their final assault. The station's shields collapsed, and the Council's central hub began to crumble. With one final blow, the survivors and their allies delivered the decisive strike. The Galactic Council was no more. As the survivors watched the station explode from the safety of their ships, Alara allowed herself a moment of relief. They had done it. The galaxy was free from the Council's tyranny. Humanity had risen from the ashes of Earth's destruction, and now they stood as a symbol of hope for all those oppressed across the stars. The fight wasn't over, but the survivors had proven one undeniable truth. As long as humanity had breath, they would never be silenced. And they would never stop fighting for the freedom of the galaxy.